This program is sponsored by Trebon Financial Strategies. You can't win the game if you don't know the rules.
Welcome to a continuing education in finances. And we've had this group on before to talk about things. We did a series on money and investing and how to be prepared, properly prepared. But something's come up since we did that series a few months ago. And we're talking about long-term care. Now, we've always had long-term care out there, but there's a whole different approach. And so, Dan or Jeri, can you talk about what's the change and how is it affecting those of us that are employed and those of us that employ people too?
Right. Okay, definitely. Well, first of all, let's talk about long-term care. We're thinking about is like, okay, long-term care, this is a health thing, right? Why are money people talking about health thing, right? Well, long-term care can be very costly, first of all.
Yes.
And there are ways to mitigate some of that cost through, forms of insurance. Long-term care insurance is one of those. And what we really wanted to talk about today and get this information out in the hands and ears of people is that Washington State has just passed a law that's going to be basically the first income tax of Washington State. It's going to be for long-term
Another
care.
tax.
Yeah, another tax, right? But long-term care, just to get back to that real quick, is long-term care is when a doctor deems that you cannot function of two of the six, generally it's six activities of daily living.
Right.
Or ADLs,
My mom
right?
went through that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those items are as shown up on the screen, but if you can't dress yourself, if you can't bathe yourself, you can't, go to the bathroom or eating, just different things like that.
Right.
If you can't do two out of the six primary, they can be up to 8 or 10 of them, but if you can't do those, that is considered long-term care.
Okay.
And then that qualifies you financially to get some funding. And the state is coming up with their answer. And I'm going to let Jeri talk about that a little bit, about what some of that their answer is.
Yeah. Is this going to be expensive, or is it something we really need to be aware of? Because I remember when my mom did the private long-term care 20, 30 years ago now, and as she reached a point in life where it wasn't inexpensive, but she got it and she used it all, okay? Which is often the case as folks get older, because she lived almost 97, all right? So welcome to reality.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the state of Washington doing something for state of Washington residents and workers, right? I'm going to guess that there's some real expense involved here, Jeri.
Yes. So as I've gone through my careers and things like that, I've actually been a nurse for 23 years. So I bring a little bit of expertise in that area.
Good.
And went to the financial field just the last year or two. But I was on a webinar just a week or so ago, and one of the biggest Googled items in 2020 was long-term care providers and long-term care insurance.
Okay.
So we know that that's a need out there, and so also the expense is about $100,000, give or take, a year of either private funding, insurance, or something like that.
Right.
So Washington has come up with a plan to help mitigate those expenses.
Yeah, but it doesn't really.
I
think I just asked the $64,000 question, didn't I?
Well, it just depends on, who's going to be impacted, and that's going to be the W-2 employees here in Washington State.
Okay.
Starting January 1st of next year, all Washington State employees will be taxed 0.58% of every $100 that they make. If you do the calculations, it's not very much, but over time that does increase. I mean, that does, make an impact.
Sure.
But what you get out of that is not very much, unfortunately.
Okay. So often folks are looking at the long care issue of several $100,000 for their lifetime, and so forth. So compared to maybe a lifetime experience of $300,000 to $500,000, I would guess, is a range that people are thinking.
Correct.
When I reach that point, I'm going to live maybe for a few more years and so forth. I'm not trying to be negative here. I'm just trying to be realistic.
It's reality.
Okay?
Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
Well, I'm thinking back to my mom's experience.
Sure.
Okay. And she lived long enough, and went on hospice 4 times. And the 4th time she was going to make it, of course, because she had made it the 3 times before. But I mean, so she was determined to spend all the money that she had put into the account. But that's unusual. The fact is, those kinds of dollars, if we're talking about expenses of $100,000, so what will this state program do? Is that covering the full $100,000 expense?
No, unfortunately, it's not. This is an expansion. It's the first of its kind in the United States. It's expanding the Medicaid program in Washington State. So this is mostly for the lower income folks that don't plan for this. Crisis sometimes comes in a have to get it fixed now.
Yeah,
And
but it's better to get something maybe than nothing.
Yes.
I better look at the issue and
Yes.
so forth. All right. Something important is coming up very soon. Okay. Well, let me ask a question first. Okay. If I contribute to this system, this taxation and so forth, and then I decide I want to live in Idaho or Wyoming or Billings, Montana, where it seems like everybody in the Northwest is going these days, I can still get the insurance payment.
Sure. So unfortunately, that is a caveat. There's a few caveats to this tax. One of them is you can only receive $100 a day if you qualify.
Okay.
Once you qualify, it's
Can
actually
I add something real quick? On that qualification period too, remember how I was talking about 2 of the 6 activities of daily living? Well, there's just 3 out of the 6. So first of all, it's harder to qualify to begin with. I just wanted to throw that in there real quick.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So the max you can get in any one person is $100 a day.
Okay.
And they're very particular about, it's not like if you have your private insurance, it is very particular what you can use it for. And you can only max out at $36,500. So if we're total,
not per year.
right?
Total. Okay.
Yes. So, and the other thing is, you're talking about moving out of state.
Yeah.
This is a Washington only thing.
Yes.
So if you pay into it while you're working in Washington, any W-2 employee at this moment in time, some solopreneurs and entrepreneurs and other business owners can buy into it if they so desire.
Okay.
But the best bang for your buck, obviously, is going to be a private long-term care coverage.
Right.
But what I was going to say is you can't go out of state to use this. It is a Washington, so you have to stay and live in Washington State the rest of your life. So if you want to retire in another country, that's not going to happen if you want to use these.
Okay. I think that's important to know. And the $36,000 lifetime expenditure. So this isn't going to solve.
Right.
I'm going to give an opinion. This isn't going to solve much of the real issue out there, is it? All right.
The typical cost is $4,000 to $7,000 per month.
Okay. Yes.
So you can see, divide 36,000 by that.
Right.
And figure out how long it's going to take.
Yeah.
And then
months. That's it.
The average long-term care stay in a facility is about 23 months.
Yes.
So the math just doesn't quite add up as far as covering it.
No. But this year, at the beginning of this, there's an opportunity to opt out, and it's a very limited period of time, isn't it?
Yes.
Let's talk about that, because that starts very soon or already.
October 31st is the deadline.
Deadline.
And here we are and coming into July, right?
Right.
And we're going for October 31st. So people have got to have their own in place to opt out of this. So this is unique. This is
They need to have their own insurance?
or something that satisfies this requirement. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Their own
So
coverage
I
somehow,
can't
right?
just opt out because I don't want it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
They have to sort of prove they have some coverage. What the state is doing here, it's not a bad thing because they're trying to help people, like
I get
Jeri
that.
mentioned.
I
Right?
get that.
They're trying to put something in place to cover those people that didn't have or
Right.
don't have. Right. The intentions are good, but like many things with the government, let's just face it, they're not the most efficient at running things, right?
No.
And so this can be a problem. So when you start looking at the numbers, it's like, what do I do? So if you want some coverage, granted, 0.58%, it's not a huge cost, right? But do you want to essentially throw that away, when you do have an option to opt out and get a much better coverage for yourself.
I was going to say
So-
for the same amount of dollars, I could certainly do better, I would think.
Well, yeah, in
For most
just to be clear though, in a private system, you're typically going to pay more, but you're going to get a lot more. So
Right.
it's more of a value-based proposition than just cost.
Yeah.
Because the cost is very minimal, but as you can see, the benefit is also very minimal.
When should you, kind of taking it out of that whole genre, but when should we be getting long-term care?
You mean,
Ask the 75-year-old who doesn't have it. Okay?
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly,
when should people be getting like
Yeah.
protection for it?
yes.
Well, protection for it, probably, typically we will recommend people as they're getting into their 60s
Yes.
and getting close to retirement usually is kind of the time when you're really thinking about
To
that.
get serious.
Yeah, sometimes in the mid to late 50s, but usually in the 60s
Right.
to get really serious
That's-
about that because it doesn't have to be age related, but generally it is.
Yeah.
Those types of things. I mean, things can happen earlier in your life to where you don't. It's kind of it sounds a little morbid, but you almost die, right? You don't die,
Right.
which life insurance would cover, but you almost die. That's what long-term care coverage is for. It's for that they didn't die, but they can't really take care of themselves anymore.
Right,
Right.
right.
Because life insurance doesn't cover that, and other insurances don't cover that. Health insurance doesn't
Right.
cover it. So it's
Well, when you think
tough.
about it, how many people do we know that are in their 80s or early 90s that are probably on the edge of needing some long-term care?
Yeah.
Especially if
Options.
they don't have family nearby and
Yes.
some other things, and they should be thinking about that.
One of the options I do want to mention, though,
Yes.
as at a younger age, once you know you're in your 80s, 90s, you can't go this route. But
Right.
in your younger years, there's an option in some cases to get long-term care coverage coupled with some life insurance coverage, and there's no additional cost in some cases even
Oh, okay.
for that. It's like it's a pay if you use it type of scenario.
And even some
it's much more
employers are
cost-effective.
doing that,
Yeah.
offering group policies and things.
Things like that as well, right? There's
Which you can
group things
carry
as well.
on afterwards, which I think makes
Some yes and some no. Again,
yeah,
depends on what the employer brings in. But yeah, those are options
Right.
too. So I like to tell people that if they set up a properly structured savings plan that's coupled with some life insurance and long-term care, that gets the best bang for their buck because now they're getting some guaranteed tax-free returns on their money, right? And they also have some protection if they need it.
Is anybody you know that can help them with this?
Oh, you think? Well, getting back to all that. So I want to point back, obviously we can help, but talk to your professional financial
Right.
advisor that you
Now.
trust, right? If you don't
Because
have
we're
somebody.
talking about 90 days as we record this.
Yes, it's
Yes.
tight, right? I mean, we're here and available if people need somebody, but you already have somebody, talk to them about it
Right.
and get this thing worked out. If you don't have someone, fine, by all means, call us, but we have some capacity. We can't help everybody, but we can do that. And this all goes back to our former series that we did on how money works.
Yeah.
This is when it comes to anything relating to money, whether it's our health care or whether it's just saving money or investing money, it's
Right.
all about learning how money works. I have to always give a plug for this book. Anybody that
I was going to
wants
say,
this book,
yes, how money works.
this book there's a page or so on this topic, long-term care, but all in all, we all need to know how money works in order to win that financial gain, right?
Right.
And we every client or prospective client that we meet with, they get a copy of this book. That's just
Free.
complimentary, yes.
Wow,
We
okay.
want them to have it that bad that we
and
cover the cost
easy
of doing that.
reading.
Yeah.
It is
Okay.
easy reading, yeah.
Because with all the stuff that comes at us online and everywhere else today,
Yeah.
we need easy reading.
Yeah.
We want to go through something in a reasonable period of time.
The average person is reading this
Yeah.
book in about an hour and a half.
Okay, an hour and a half.
Hour to hour and a half. So it's
Okay,
pretty
so-
quick. But I at least recommend that. But definitely, they need to talk to their financial advisor about this situation.
I did want to say something. There are a couple companies I know of other professionals in this area that are struggling to keep up with the clients that do want long-term care. So they're actually maxing out on who they can
Okay,
help.
so this is generating,
This is
Some-
generating
Oh, yeah.
a buzz.
Yeah.
Urgency.
Yeah.
Urgency.
There's now urgent. Sometimes that's we're creatures of habit and creatures of procrastination, right?
Yeah.
Human beings, and so until things get hot enough, we don't always.
we say that on one of the hottest days ever in Spokane
There's
as we
that, right?
record this, right?
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
You just had to get that in, didn't
Yeah,
you?
well, no pun intended, but I guess it just came out. Right? Maybe I'm just feeling it.
Yeah.
But it is true. People they just need to go get the information, read up on the law yourself, and
Yes.
really understand it.
Yeah.
But know that there's options out there.
Yeah.
That's the main message we want to get out today.
Well, Jeri, with your background, this helps too because you understand and can easily understand the need out there. You've been with people like my mom and others who, as they age and so
Yes.
forth, that it doesn't get easier.
Yes.
Okay, and you might have 2 or 3 issues, but the longer you live, more likely to have
I
other issues.
did want to point that very thing out. We do have a slide of the highest demographic in the next 50 years is 85-year-olds.
Oh, really?
And we're in that,
We are,
in
aren't
that
we?
demographic ourselves. So
We'll go and
it's-
put that up on the screen so
yeah,
people can
so-
see it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a truth. And knowing these specifics is very important.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming today and helping our viewers. I love it when we can provide good information, timely information, that even, I'm going to say this because we're open and honest here, even if they don't call you,
Yeah.
Right.
that you've urged people
Absolutely.
to take a look at this. And I know you come from that
Exactly.
position, and I think that's great. It really
Education
is.
first. It's,
Absolutely,
you know,
isn't it?
that's the only way to make a good decision is to have good
Right.
information.
Well, thank you both for being here today.
Thank you.
You bet.
Have a good day.
You too.
This program is sponsored by Trebon Financial Strategies. You can't win the game if you don't know the rules.